Well, it's not telling me. Oh, there it is. Make a co-host. Alrighty. Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Nanette Kennedy, and this is the Conversations with God book group. And we are reading Friendship with God, and we are on page 234, 238,
338.
338. And I don't know if I introduced myself, but I'm Nanette Kennedy with Humanities Team and the Evolution Revolution. And Linda, do you want to describe what your note says about what we're thinking about doing today?
Right. So I had a note that we wanted to have a discussion about judgment and acceptance before we picked up with reading this morning. Because as you recall, this chapter started out, and I'm just going back to the beginning to get some notes here. So the very beginning of this chapter starts out with Neil asking, what does it mean to be totally accepting, blessing, and grateful? These last three of the five attitudes of God are not as clear to me, especially 3 and 4. So there was a big discussion in the beginning of this chapter about acceptance and how do we accept things. Neil asks, you should accept anything, even those things you disagree with. So that's where we were.
Well, would anybody like to start the conversation?
I'll go ahead and start it. One of the points that Neil made somewhere along in here, he says, yet if we condemn nothing, we seem to be approving of everything. And God comes back and says failure to condemn does not mean failure to seek change. And so for me, this whole chapter is talking about this concept that we talk about all the time, which is the ability to accept whatever that is presenting itself to us without judgment, without resistance, without the desire for it to be different. Because as soon as you don't like what you're getting, you're in resistance, and you've cut yourself off from the flow of the energy of divinity. And so I think it's a critical concept to really get hold of, that not to judge and to just allow and to be open, and then to choose our response to whatever it is that's showing up. I'm complete.
Hello, can I be heard?
Yes.
Hello. Hi. Okay. Well, Nat Khan has a great saying. It's 4 words, and he says, whatever arises, love that. Whatever arises, love that.
Yeah, that's
Over.
Perfect, Anne.
Yep. That's one for the refrigerator and the bathroom mirror. Because as we all know, sometimes it's a lot easier said than done. And I don't know if it was last week that we were talking about being triggered and the difference, or if it was the week before. But it's the key to those words you just mentioned, Anne.
Actually, that's the name of his book, too. Whatever arises, love that.
That's the name of his first book.
What I wanted to share, though, was this thing that has really had me is working with my friend Daryl with dementia. I he's doing so much better since I've been spending time with him and doing healings with him and stuff like that. And what I can't, and this is really funny, but I have conversations with him. A lot of it's nonverbal, but it's actually, I've never had this experience with anyone. Maybe someone that you're really close to, you've had a similar experience to, but I actually know when he can get a word or two out. I actually know what he's thinking. I can kind of read his thoughts or read what he's thinking. But more than that, I'm actually able to have a conversation with him. He's really there. And I find it really interesting that not one of his doctors thinks that he's capable of carrying on a conversation about anything. And nobody where he's staying thinks that he can communicate. And so there's two questions to this. How come I'm the only one that can understand this guy? Or what is their problem? And so I brought a friend of mine to meet him. And I brought someone else to meet him. And they basically can see he's in there too. But that's the only kind of feedback that I can see. But I think it's really interesting that what we're not interested in, we don't want to hear about, we don't pay attention to. It's like when people are talking to you, if you're not talking about something that they think they're interested in or want to know about, you're talking to the wall. And I just look at it that even if my friend could communicate better, it's like no one would take the time that it would take to slow down enough to be with this person long enough to allow this person to come through. And the thing that is amazing to me in working with him is, and I'm getting very emotional, because in working with him, I know what he's feeling. I know what it's like to be in that pre-verbal state where you really can't communicate your feelings. You know, I know what it's like to want to express yourself, but not be able to. But there was something else, and I kind of lost it, which I was saying before that, and understanding him was slowing down and having the patience or the time to let something, give something the time it needs. There's such a time pressure in this, I feel, such a time pressure that it has such a severe effect on me because I'm slow. I had a learning disability, and it's like no one's ever had patience with me to slow down or to rephrase, to do it in a way. And so that gives me an ability, that somehow gave me an ability that's showing up now to work with this person. And the point that I'm making is that when they say there's a blessing in everything, but you can't always see it, it's like as we deal with duality, the negative and the positive, we're at a place now where we have to be able to hold both spectrums at the same time. You have to be able to hold the beauty of something and the ugliness of something to be able to really respond and understand more. And so what I'm saying is here everybody looks at him and they immediately go into, oh, it's such a pity, oh, it's such a shame. But it's like he doesn't exist and he's already gone. And that's what the shame is. But the beauty is what I was describing, is the amount of love and light that this person carries because he has no mind. And people can't understand that. Anyway, I'm over. He's
Thank
becoming
you,
my
Ann.
greatest teacher. Yeah, he's becoming my greatest teacher. It's really interesting. It's like I feel like either he is, like they say, they think he's dying. I think he's ascending. I see so many qualities here of all the spiritual stuff that we read about and we think about and we hope to be and all that. And I just see that when the mind goes, all that's left in him is who he is. You can actually see, you can see his soul. There's nothing blocking it if you look. Over.
I think that this is an interesting example of the kind of challenge that we have in trying to love whatever it is that shows up, because that would mean we have to love the doctors that don't recognize this guy, the doctors that have written him off, the attitudes that are being given about him. We have to love all of it.
It's non-judgmental. It's not about
Right.
good or bad or right or wrong. You can't judge
Right.
them. They know what
Right.
they know. That's what I'm saying. You have to be able to hold both poles.
Well, right, exactly. And so that's why it's such
Yeah.
a beautiful example of the challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. See, what's sad to me is that if I didn't step up to the plate and I accepted legal guardianship for this person, he was my friend for 13 years, you know? Anyway, he would be somewhere, he'd probably not be here, and he probably would have just been in a vegetable state, drugged out by the system. And that's the shame of it, is that we have all this time and we want all these things. But even if we just gave a little bit of ourselves away each day, what a difference it would make in the world. So many need a helping hand.
Right. And I think the exercise is to get to the place where you're not tempted to say there's a shame of it, because even that is a judgment.
Yes, thank you for that. I agree.
It's all perfect. It's all perfect.
That's a very good point. Yeah, that's the point, is everything is exactly the way it is, even though we think it ought to be different. And that's a very good, yes, thank you. Over.
Thank you for sharing.
I'm going to tell you guys something. For the last 3 or 4 minutes, I'm getting these random calls from people I don't know, and they're FaceTime, and I don't even know how to turn it off. So I was trying to turn my phone off and got my phone back on. And then a friend of mine who's also in the Evolution Revolution called and asked if we could say a prayer for someone, because she listens to the recordings apparently, and somebody that's missing, which we can bring that in later. But then I also got a call from a friend of mine who just got out of major kidney surgery. I'm like, oh my Lord, all in the same 3 minutes. And I'm trying to listen and, and type, I'm glad you're good. And, I don't know who you are. Don't call me. So sorry, I had a little sidetrack there. I felt like for those of us that are old enough to remember Laughing.
There you go again.
This person's trying to call me again. It's not happening, dude. Don't know you. But anyway, what was her name? Lily Tomlin played the operator.
Yeah.
That's what I was feeling like. I was like, oh my God. Anyway, complete sidetrack there. But then I was thinking, I was judging this person who's calling me that I don't know. And, so even the smallest things, we have to be careful of. But I just keep hitting the hang up button, and, not going to happen. But what I was going to say about your friend, Anne, is I had a friend probably getting close to 20 years ago now. And she got really sick with like a sinus infection and just ignored it. And then she ended up having a stroke because it's so close to your brain. Your sinuses are so close to your brain. And she, never walk, talk again. And I wasn't sure how to communicate with her, but she was an avid reader. So I would just go up to this care center that she was in and read to her for about an hour, and I couldn't tell whether she was enjoying it or not, but that's the only way I knew how to communicate with her.
Oh, I got to tell you. Yeah, that reminds me. Last week, remember I said I had my friend Daryl on the call with us?
Mm-hmm.
He paid attention to the entire call, never once lost his interest, and he understood everything that you read.
Well, that's nice. So this is the same person you were just talking about.
Yeah.
Well, that's nice. Yeah.
Over.
Nanette was just talking about humour just there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And I've just been to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in Scotland, which is all young people playing all sorts of drama and comedy and things. A friend of mine's daughter was doing her first little drama show, and how young people were dealing with a lot of issues of things that they felt strongly about without judging them was through humour. And I think that's very powerful. Things that they want to change in the world, they don't want to judge, but they actually want to change, and they're addressing it through humour.
It's interesting you mentioned that, Sarah, because I was listening to the International Public Radio station, and comedians, the younger comedians that are coming up today, that are making, it's a combination of serious and humor when they get up on that stage, because of just what you said. There's so much going on in the world around us that frankly has a lot of people scared to death. And it's not only their personal stories, but the universal story. And so they purposely pepper their act with humor, so that it's not all this heavy stuff, and it breaks over to humor so that they can have that release. And I find that very interesting, because I just heard about that on NPR, International Public Radio, the other day. Anybody else? Well, maybe we should go ahead and start reading, since it's getting close to the half hour.
All right. Okay, so we are on page 338 of Friendship with God and Uncommon Dialogue, and this is Neil speaking. Gary Zukav had returned to the public eye by then, of course, accepting invitations to appear on Oprah and even going out now for book signings and lectures. And his book about the soul is a bestseller all over again. I asked him how he was dealing with his fame. He understood, of course, that I was really asking for some advice about how I would deal with mine. And so he thought for a moment, his eyes glazed over briefly, and I watched him go somewhere else. He spoke quietly again. First, I have to find my center, my inner truth, my authenticity. I search for this every day. I seek it actively. I went looking for it before I answered your question, and then I try to move from there into everything I do, whether it's my writing or media interview or a book signing somewhere. If I'm on Oprah, for instance, I try to forget that I'm talking to 70 million people. I've got to keep talking to the people right in front of me, to the audience right there in the studio. And if I never abandon my center, I stay in tune with myself And that allows me to stay in tune with others and with everything around me. Surely this must be what is meant by living life harmoniously. My authentic truth is that life has been exciting since the Conversation with God trilogy was published. And one of the exciting parts of it has been learning that most people of fame and importance are not inaccessible and unapproachable and self-inflated, as I sometimes imagined them to be. In fact, it's just the opposite. The people of high profile whom I've met have been wonderfully real, genuine, sensitive, and caring. And I'm coming to see that these qualities which are common to people I'm coming to see that these are qualities which are common to people who stand out. One day the phone rang at my home, and it was Ed Asner. He, along with Ellen Burstyn, read the words of God on the audio tapes of Conversations with God. We got to talking about the 8-column, top of the page exhortation of me that morning in the Wall Street Journal. "Hey," Ed growled, "don't let him get to you, kid." I could sense his energy shift as he sought to give me some words of encouragement at what he knew must have been a low point for me. I said that I was thinking of writing a letter to the Journal in response to its hit piece. "Nah," he said, "don't do that. That's not who you are. I know a little bit about the press tearing you apart." He said, chuckling. Then he became serious. "They don't know who you are, but you do. Stay close to that, because that's what's most important. They'll come around. They all come around, as long as you stay where you are. Don't let anyone or anything pull you out of your truth." Ed Asner, like Gary, is a gentle, loving person who understands all about authenticity and lives it. So does Shirley MacLaine. I met Shirley through Chantel Westerman, then the entertainment correspondent for Good Morning America. We were going to be filming an interview for GMA, and on the day of the shoot, Chantel and Nancy and I were lunching in Santa Monica. "I know someone who you should know, and who should know you, and I'm sure she'd be interested in meeting you," Chantel offered over salad. "Can I call her?" "Who are we talking about?" I asked. "Shirley MacLaine," Chantel replied casually. "Shirley MacLaine," I shouted inside my head. "I get to meet Shirley MacLaine?" Outwardly, I tried to remain cool. "Well, if you'd like to arrange it," I said in my best offhanded manner, "go ahead." Do you suppose that if we show people that we're really excited about something, we imagine that we're going to somehow be more vulnerable? I don't know. I don't know what that is. I just know I'm giving it up. I'm throwing away all protective wrappers I've had around me, so people would never know that I'm thinking, how I'm feeling, or what's going on with me. What's the point of living if I'm spending half my life hiding out? I've tried to learn from people like Gary and Ed and Shirley. We had a dinner with Shirley that night in the private dining room at the Beverly Hills Hotel. Shirley MacLaine is a very real person, one of the realest I've ever met. And she gets right down to compelling you to be real with her, too. By that, I mean that she doesn't have time for a lot of meaningless pleasantry. She's not much into small talk. "So," she said as I slid into the booth next to her, "did you really talk to God?" "I think so," I replied modestly. "You think so?" She was incredulous. "You think so?" "Well," I stammered, that was my experience." "Well, then don't you think you should say that? Isn't that what happened?" "Well, that is what happened. It's just that some people have a hard time accepting that if I just pop right out with it. Hang on, I need to cough." Oh, and I thought I was muted, and I guess I wasn't. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. Oh, you care what people think? Shirley probed, her face now very close, her eyes searching mine. Why? Shirley is always asking questions. What do you think about this? What do you know about that? What makes you think you know what you know about what you think you know? How is it for you when so-and-so happens? I've enjoyed several visits with Shirley since, and I'm pretty clear why she is such an incredible actress. She seems to make every person she meets a case study, taking a very real interest in them, and she gives to each person a very real part of herself. She holds nothing back. Her joy, her laughter, her tears, her truth, it's all there, given as a gift from a genuine person being genuinely herself. She does not tailor her behavior, her personality, her comments, or conversation to anybody for any reason. And here's what Shirley has shared with me, not from anything particular that she has said during our times together, but just from her beingness. Never take someone else's answer for your own. Never give up who you are, and never stop exploring who you could be if you moved to the next level. That takes courage. Which brings me to two of the most courageous people I know, Ellen DeGeneres and Anne Hecht. It was December of 1998 that Nancy and I received an invitation to spend a few days with these two remarkable women. They asked if we could arrive in time for a day-long gathering they were planning with a few friends for January 1st. We're starting a new life in this new year, and we couldn't think of anyone we'd rather spend New Year's Day with than you, their message said. The books have inspired us so much. When Nancy and I flew from Estes Park, Colorado, where we'd just finished that morning our annual year-end Recreating Yourself retreat, I don't think there's any place on earth where I have felt more comfortable, more rapidly, than I did in Ellen and Anne's home. It's difficult not to feel instantly comfortable because their space, all pretense is gone. All things disingenuous disappear. And what's left is unconditional acceptance of who you are, as you are. No excuses required, no explanations needed, no guilt or shame or fear or feeling of not being enough. The experience is not the result of anything in particular that Ellen and Anne are doing, but what they are being. First, they are being loving, openly, honestly, continuously. This shows up as warmth and an easy affection shared with each other and with everyone else in the room. Then they're being transparent, which is, of course, another way of being loving. There isn't a hidden agenda. There isn't an unspoken truth. There isn't a single deception in the space. They are what they are, and you are what you are, and it is all okay. And the fact that it is all okay makes every moment delicious. Anne and Ellen's home and Anne and Ellen's heart say simply, welcome, you're safe here. That is such a special gift to give another. I only hope that I can always provide such safety in my own space with everyone I touch. I've had it modeled for me now by many masters, I just wish I could have met these wonderful people a few years earlier. Everything is perfect. You met them at just the right time. Yes, but a few years earlier, and I could have learned what their lives have taught me before I did so much damage to others. You have done no damage to others, any more than others have done damage to you. Have you not had people who you've imagined to be villains in your life? Well, maybe one or two. And have you been irrevocably damaged by them? No, I guess not. You guess not? You're sounding like Shirley. Beats sounding like George Burns. Cute. The point is, you have not been damaged by others in your life who did what you wish they had not done, or who didn't do what you wish they had. I tell you this again. I have sent you nothing but angels. These people all brought you gifts, wonderful gifts, designed to help you remember who you really are. And you have done the same for others. And when you all get through with this grand adventure, you will see that clearly, and you will thank each other. I tell you, the day will come when you will review your life and be thankful for every minute of it. Every hurt, every sorrow, every joy, every celebration. Every moment of your life will be a treasure to you, for you will see the utter perfection of the design. You will stand back from the weaving and see the tapestry, and you will weep at the beauty of it. So love each other, every other, all others, even those you have called your persecutors, even those you have cursed as enemies. Love each other and love yourself. For God's sake, love yourself. I mean that literally. Love yourself for God's sake. That has sometimes been very hard to do, especially when I think about how I've been in the past. I wasn't a very nice person during most of my life. I spent 30 years, my 20s, my 30s, and 40s, being an utter, don't say it. Don't indict yourself that way. You were not the worst person who ever walked the face of the earth. You are not the devil incarnate. You were and are a human being, making mistakes, trying to find your way home. You were confused. You did what you did because you were confused. You were not lost. You were not lost, and now you are found. Do not lose yourself again. This time in the labyrinth of your own self-pity, in the maze of your own guilt. Rather call yourself forth in the next grandest version of the greatest vision ever you held about who you are. Tell your story, yes, but do not be your story. Your story is like everyone's life story. It is just who you thought you were. It is not who you really are. If you use it to remember who you really are, you will have used it wisely. You will have used it exactly as it was intended to be used. So tell your story, and let us see what else you have remembered as a result of it, and what there is for all people to remember. Well, maybe I wasn't an utter whatever, but I certainly wasn't very good at making people feel safe. Even in the early 80s, when I thought I'd learned a little about personal growth, I wasn't applying what I was learning. I'd married again. I left the Terry Cole Whitaker Ministries and moved away from the hubbub of San Diego, the tiny town of Klickitat, Washington. But life didn't work out very well there either, largely because I was simply not very safe to be around. I was selfish and manipulated every moment and person I could find in order to get what I wanted. Not much changed when I moved to Portland, Oregon, hoping to get a fresh start. Instead of improving, my life went from complicated to more complicated. The crushing blow of being in a huge fire in the apartment house where I was living with my wife, destroying just about everything we owned. But I hadn't hit rock bottom yet. I blew my marriage apart, and then I formed other relationships and blew them apart. I was struggling like a drowning man, trying to stay afloat, nearly taking everyone around down with me. By this time, I knew that things couldn't get worse. Except they did. An 80-year-old man in a Studebaker hit the car I was driving head on, leaving me with a broken neck. I wound up in a Philadelphia collar for over a year, undergoing intensive physical therapy daily for months, every other day for more months, finally dropping off to 2 visits a week, and then at last it was over. But so was everything else in my life. I'd lost my earning power, lost my latest relationship. I walked outside one day to find my car had been stolen. It was a classic case of when it rains, it pours, and I will remember that moment for the rest of my life. Still reeling from everything else that was going on, I walked up and down the street in vain hope that I'd simply forgotten where I'd parked. Then, with utter resignation and deep bitterness, I dropped to the sidewalk on my knees and wailed away in my anger. A passing woman gave me a wide-eyed look and scurried to the other side of the street. 2 days later, I took the last few dollars I had and I bought a bus ticket to Southern Oregon, where 3 of my children were living with their mother. I asked if she could give me some help, maybe let me stay in an empty room she had in the house for a few weeks until I could get on my feet. Understandably, she turned me down and turned me out. I told her I had no place else to go. She said, "You can have the tent and the camping gear." That's how I wound up on the center lawn at Jackson Hot Springs, just outside Ashland, Oregon, where the space rental was $25 a week that I didn't have. I begged the campground manager for a few days to get some money together, and he rolled his eyes. The park was already filled with transients, and the last thing he needed was one more. But he listened to my story. He heard about the fire and the accident and the broken neck and the stolen car and the incredible unending run of luck, and I guess his heart went out to me. "Okay," he said, "a few days. See what you can work out. Put your tent down over there." I was 45 years old, and I felt like my life had come to an end. I had gone from being a well-paid professional in the broadcasting industry, managing editor of a newspaper, public information officer for one of the nation's largest school systems, and a personal assistant to Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, to picking up beer cans and soda bottles on the street and in the park to claim the 5-cent deposit. 20 cans make $1, 100 make a $5. 5 fivers a week keeps me in the campground. I learned a few things about life on the streets during the better part of a year that I spent in the hot springs. I wasn't exactly on the street, but I was the next closest thing to it. And I found out that there's a code out there in the open air, on the streets and under the bridges and in the parks, that if the rest of the planet followed it, would change the world. Help each other. If you're out there for more than a few weeks, you get to know the others who are out there with you, and they get to know you. Nothing personal, mind you. Nobody asks how you came to be here. But if they see you in trouble, they won't pass you by, as so many under roof people will. They'll stop and say, "Are you okay?" And if you need something, they can help you with it. You've got it. I've had guys on the street give me their last pair of dry socks or half of the day's canned pickings when it looked like I wasn't going to make my quota. And if somebody made a big score, a fiver or a 10 spot from a passerby, he'd come back to the campsite with food for everybody. I remember trying to set up that first night. It was really dusk when I got to the grounds. I knew I had to work fast, and I didn't exactly have tons of tent pitching experience. The wind was whipping up, and it looked like rain. "Tie her down to that tree," came a gruff voice out of the nowhere. "Then send a line back over to the telephone pole. Put a marker on the line so you don't kill yourself in the middle of the night going to the John." The rain began falling lightly. Suddenly, we were putting the tent up together. My unnamed friend said nothing that wasn't necessary, limiting his comments to "need a stake over there," or "better get a fly up," or "you'll be sleeping in a lake." When we finished, he did most of the work, actually. He tossed my hammer to the ground. "That ought to hold you," he muttered and walked away. "Hey, thanks," I called after him. "What's your name?" "It doesn't matter," he said, and he didn't look back. I never saw him again. My life became very simple in the park. My biggest challenge and my biggest desire was staying warm and dry. I wasn't yearning for a big promotion, worrying about getting the girl, fretting over the phone bill, or asking myself what I was doing with the rest of my life. It was raining a lot, and the chill winds of March were blowing, and I was simply trying to keep warm and dry. Once in a while, I wondered how I was going to get out of there, but mostly I wondered how I was going to just stay there. $25 a week was a lot of money to come up with out of thin air. I intended to look for work, of course, but this was right here, right now. This was about tonight and tomorrow and the day after that. I was mending a broken neck. I had no car, no money, very little food, and no place to live. Then again, it was spring moving into summer. That was on the plus side. Every day I rummaged through the trash cans in hopes of finding a newspaper, half an apple that somebody didn't finish, a lunch bag with a sandwich that Junior wouldn't eat. The newspaper was for extra padding under the tent. It kept the warmth in, the seepage out, and was softer and more level than the lumpy ground. Most important, though, it was a source of information about jobs. Every time I got my hands on a paper, I scoured the classifieds, looking for work. With my neck injury, I couldn't do anything very physical, and most of the jobs immediately available for men were physical. Day laborer, helper on this crew or that. But 2 months into the search, I hit pay dirt. Radio announcer, weekend fill-in, must have previous experience, call, etc., etc. My heart jumped. How many guys could there be in Medford, Oregon with experience in broadcasting who weren't already working? I raced to the telephone booth, flipped to thank God they were there, yellow pages to broadcasting stations, dropped in one of my precious quarters, and called the number. The program director, who I knew would be doing the hiring, was not in. "Can he get back to you?" a lady's voice was asking. "Sure," I said, casually mentioning in my best radio voice that I was calling in reference to the help wanted ad. "I'll be here until 4 o'clock. I gave her the payphone number and hung up, and then sat on the ground next to the booth for 3 hours waiting for the callback that never came. The next morning, I found a paperback romance novel in the trash. snatched it up, and headed back to the payphone booth, to the phone booth. I wanted to be prepared to wait out the day, if need be. Sitting down at 9 o'clock and cracking open my book, I told myself that if no call came before noon, I'd invest another quarter and call the station after lunch. The phone rang at 9:35. Sorry I couldn't get back to you yesterday, the PD said. I got tied up. So I'm told you saw the ad for a weekend jock. You got experience? Again, I went deep into my lower register. Well, I've done some on-air work here and there, I said nonchalantly, and then added, over the last few years. While this exchange was taking place, I prayed that a big RV didn't rumble into the park as I was standing there talking. I didn't want to have to explain why a huge vehicle was driving through my living room. Why don't you come in, the program director offered. You got an air check? An air check is a tape recording, edited to exclude the music of a disc jockey's on-air work. I definitely piqued his interest. No, I left all my stuff in Portland, I fibbed, but I can do a live read on any copy you give me, and I think you'll get an idea of what I can do. All right, he agreed. Drop in here around 3. I go on at 4, so don't be too late. Got it. I actually jumped in the air and let out a whoop as I stepped out of the phone booth. A couple of the boys were walking by. That good, eh? One of them drawled. I think I found a job, I crowed. They were genuinely happy for me. Doing what? One of them wanted to know. Weekend disc jockey. I go in for an interview at 3. Looking like that? I hadn't thought about my appearance. There'd been no haircut for weeks, but I could possibly get away with that. Half the disc jockeys in America had ponytails. But I would have to do something about my clothes. There was a laundry room on the grounds, but I didn't have any money to buy soap, get something washed and dried and ready to wear, plus pay the bus fare up to Medford and back. It hadn't hit me until just then how poor I was. I couldn't make a basic maneuver like running into town for a quick job interview without some sort of a miracle occurring. I got an experience right then and there of the obstacles people on the street face, just trying to get back on their feet and lead a regular life again. The two men looked at me as if they knew exactly what I was thinking. You got no money, right? One of them half snorted. A couple of bucks, I guess, probably overestimating. Okay, come on, kid. I followed them to a circle of tents where a number of other men were camped. He's got a chance to work his way out of here, they explained to their friends, and mumbled something else I didn't hear. Then turning to me, the older of the two said, have you got something decent to wear? Yeah, in my duffel bag, but nothing clean, nothing ready. Bring it back over here. By the time I returned, a woman I'd seen around the springs had joined the men. She lived in one of the small trailers that dotted the park. You get these things washed and dried, and I'll iron them for you, honey, she announced. One of the men stepped forward and handed me a small paper bag, jingling with coins. The fellows dipped in and pulled us together. Go do your laundry. 5 hours later, I showed up at the radio station, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and looking like I'd stepped out of my uptown apartment. I got the job. We're talking $6.25 an hour for 2 8-hour days, the program director said. I'm sorry I can't offer you more. You're overqualified, and I'd understand if you decided not to take it. $100 a week. I was going to make $100 a week. That's $400 a month. At that time in my life, a fortune. No, it's just what I was looking for right now, I offered offhandedly. I've enjoyed my career in radio, and now I've gone on to something else. I just wanted to find a way to keep my hand in it. This will be fun for me. And I wasn't lying, because fun it was. The fun of surviving, I lived in my tent for a couple more months. I saved up enough to buy myself a 63 Nash Rambler for $300. I felt like a millionaire. I was the only one in our group at the campsite with wheels, and the only one with a regular income. And I shared both freely with all the others, never forgetting what they had done for me. Nervous about the dropping temperature, I moved in November into one of the tiny one-room cabins at the park that rented for $75 a week. I felt guilty leaving my friends outside. None of them had that kind of money, so I'd invite one or two of them to share the space with me on really cold or rainy nights. I tried to rotate the guys around so everyone had a chance to get out of the weather. Nanette, I want to pause. It's 3 minutes till. Nanette?
Yep, I was on mute.
Oh, sorry.
I think that's a good idea because I want to set an intention for this woman that's missing, and then I want Shabana to give us a short prayer or meditation. Now, if I can only find. Good Lord. Apparently I can't find it.
I'll set a generic intention. Let's just get on with it, Nanette.
Okay.
Lord God, people are missing all the time, but you know exactly where they are. And it's your intention to help us, and we desire to help those who are lost, because life is hard enough even when we're found. So bring us all home to you, because that's where we belong. Amen.
Thank you, Shabana.
Thank you, Shabana.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Shabana.
Thank you, Nanette. I'm glad that you got your internet back.
Yeah, me too. It was kind of scary. Well, I love you all, and we'll see you next week. And if I find out any differently about which book it is for the next group, I'll post it in Evo Revo. And Shabana, I'll write to you.
I'm glad I'm not giving you extra work.
Yeah. No worries. All right, everybody.
Everybody.
I love you.
Love you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You're looking lovely.